I'm Alex from BrokeHorrorFan.com, and welcome to the 8th installment of What's in the Box. It's hard to believe that Halloween is next week already, but we've had a pretty exciting season this year. There's been so many cool movies, releases, events, things to do, and I think my mail carrier might have worked overtime this month with all the cool stuff I've received, as you've seen in past videos, and I'm going to show you more right now. This first item may be the best horror release of the Halloween season, and I know that's saying a lot, but I think you'll agree that it's at least a contender, if not the number one pick. The physical release of Stranger Things Season 1. It's rare for Netflix to give their original series a physical release, but they've done it for a few titles like House of Cards and the Marvel series that they do, and Stranger Things is certainly a worthy addition to that cause. But they go above and beyond with this one. I mean, first just look at the box. It's obviously modeled after an old VHS box, which looks great. The attention to detail is amazing, right down to the back cover that has a pretty vague synopsis and like one still that, I mean, it's cool. It's Winona Ryder with the lights, but it's not like the Demogorgon or anything really exciting, which is kind of how they did the old VHS boxes. It would have really cool hand-drawn art, and then the back of the box, you'd kind of be debating if the movie would ever live up to that. Thankfully, we know Stranger Things does live up to that, so they can get away with it. But they go way beyond just the cover art. Let me show you what's inside. There's a little box within that looks just like a VHS tape, and then this opens up. Over here you get a little Friends Don't Lie sticky note, and you also have a fold-out poster. Obviously, I don't have to sell anyone on watching Stranger Things. The first season is so good, it brings to mind so many of our favorite movies and shows. And of course, the second season's just about to come out, so this is a perfect time to rewatch, but you're probably thinking, I already pay for Netflix streaming service, the price is going up soon, why do I need to own a physical copy? Well, let me tell you, no, there's not any special features, but unless you have like a really, really high quality stream that you can get the 4K Ultra HD, you're probably going to have a better viewing experience on Blu-ray. Great picture and audio quality, especially the audio. I mean, the score sounds so good on a physical copy. Like I said, there's no special features, which is kind of a bummer. They could have at least thrown in some of the stuff they put for online content. And there's unskippable trailers at the beginning of the first disc that's like 3 minutes long that you're forced to sit through, which is kind of a bummer. But the second disc does not have any, so you can fly right through them if you want to binge watch. I usually like to throw some classic black and white horror films into my October viewing rotation. It's kind of like comfort food for any horror fan, and usually I lean towards the Universal monster movies, which are tried and true. But this year I have a new edition, and I think you should have it too. It's The Old Dark House. The film was released in 1932 and stars Boris Karloff. At least he gets top billing because he was a big name. He just had Frankenstein come out the year prior. Of course, he played Frankenstein's monster. But he's kind of a supporting character at best, but he plays a cool monster with makeup by Jack Pierce, who also did the Frankenstein makeup. It's directed by James Whale, who also directed Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, so a nice little reunion for the two in between those two films. It also features Gloria Stewart, who was in The Invisible Man, which was another film directed by James Whale, and she was in Titanic, you know her as Old Rose more likely. But it's a cool little film, spooky haunted house, a little tropey setup, but it was before they were all cliches about people who break down in a thunderstorm. It's a dark and stormy night, so they seek refuge at this old gothic castle. So the atmosphere is good, it's gothic, but it also has an interesting sense of humor. Before, there was a lot of horror comedies, so it's a little off-kilter in terms of tone, a little slow-moving, because there's a lot of dialogue and doesn't really pick up till the very end. There's something cool about these old films, just the atmosphere that they bring. It's only 72 minutes long, which to me is like a godsend when you're trying to cram in all these movies all month. So I highly recommend picking this one up. Not only is it a fun movie, it was almost lost, and there's a good little information about how it was recovered on the disc. But this one was restored in 4K by the Cohen Film Collection. If you're not familiar with them, they do top-notch work, and I highly recommend picking this one up. My friends over at Vinegar Syndrome are always releasing cool, obscure genre movies on Blu-ray and DVD that they restore themselves, but this October was like a really impressive lineup for them. Most notably, they finally released Demon Wind on Blu-ray and DVD. The movie was produced in the 80s, but not released until 1990, and it was kind of a video store staple, and now it's one of the last remaining big relics of the video store days, until now, because we've got this Blu-ray. You might remember its lenticular cover art on the old VHS. It was looked just like this demon here, but it moved when you moved the case, which Vinegar Syndrome does offer a limited edition slipcase that recreates that. I don't have it here. But in any event, the demon on the cover never shows up in the movie, which is classic, you know, late 80s, early 90s horror VHS marketing. There's also not a lot of window smashing, but I mean, it's a fun movie. I wouldn't say a great movie, but a fun movie. It's worth the wait to finally get this one. It's basically one in a long line of Evil Dead ripoffs, and there's a few good ones like Demons, Night of the Demons, Demon Knight. Demon Wind isn't quite on that level, but it's better than a lot of like the cheap knockoffs because it has a lot of like heart behind it. The demons kind of look like they're covered in chewed bubble gum and they bleed weird yellow nacho cheese sauce, kind of like Phantasm. So they're throwing a lot at you. There's also some weird like Lucio Fulci dreamlike visuals. This is an interesting movie made on a low budget by people who kind of didn't have a lot of experience, but that's okay because they got a fun movie out of it. And now you finally have it in HD. Of course, Vinegar Syndrome you can always rely on for a good transfer. They're restored in 2K from the original negative. It is a Blu-ray DVD combo pack like most of Vinegar Syndrome's releases, which is exciting in this case because it's never been available on either format before. It also has reversible artwork. Now the artwork on the other side is not particularly exciting. It's basically just the demon on the other side of the window before he crashes through, but I appreciate having options nonetheless. Now Demon Wind won't be the best movie you watch all year, but whether you saw it on VHS as a kid or you've never seen it before, you'll definitely be entertained. It looks really good in high definition. As a matter of fact, it kind of hurts it in some ways because you can see some edges on the makeup that it wasn't that great, but still a lot of fun. There are some cool practical effects and some bad optical effects, but I think you'll enjoy this one. And I have one more Vinegar Syndrome title to discuss with you today. It is a great title, so good in fact that I'm pretty sure the dude from Cannibal Corpse took his name from it. It is The Corpse Grinders. This one's from 1971. It's kind of like if Herschel Gordon Lewis wrote a script for Ed Wood to direct, which is to say fun but bad, but fun again. I recommend checking this out if you're into that kind of thing. It's actually directed by Ted V. Michaels, who did The Doll Squad and The Astro Zombies, who's kind of infamously bad filmmaker, I hate to say, but this is one of his more entertaining ones that I've seen. It's about killer cats, which is cool, although it kind of downplays that because this was pre-Jaws. If it came out like 5 years later, the cats would play a much bigger role. It's actually about a cat food company who puts the corpses that are ground up into cat food, and then the cats kind of become crazy and attack man once they get a taste for flesh. Actually co-written by Bryan Cranston's father, which is a fun little fact about it. This is not from the original camera negative like most prints. There's a little title card explaining the source. It's actually from a kind of a secondary source. I don't want to get too technical because I don't understand it myself, but it still looks good. There are cigarette burns on the print, which actually kind of adds to the ambiance of it, if you ask me. So there's no real loss in quality there. It does have reversible artwork, but the backside basically features the same graphics in a different layout with a more emphasis on the corpse grinding machine itself, which, hey, it's fine by me. Now the movie's a little slow. It kind of focuses too much on the detective work that this doctor and nurse do to investigate the cat food company. And it's kind of boring at times, I hate to say it, because basically the audience already knows what they're investigating. They know every step of the way ahead of the characters. So it's not the best approach to like a mystery type story, but it's still a fun one. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's only like 73 minutes long. So again, if you want a quick watch that's a little fun, little dated, little hammy, but not a bad time, check out The Corpse Grinders. There has been a ridiculous amount of great horror soundtracks pressed on vinyl lately. I know I've been going broke buying them. I've highlighted a lot here on the What's in the Box videos, and there's so much more out there. But if you want something a little outside the box, no pun intended, something a little weird to set the mood, especially for Halloween, look no further than Gundella's The Hour of the Witch. Gundella, and I believe I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm not 100% sure on the emphasis. But in any event, she's a descendant of Scottish witches, and she uses her Wiccan upbringing as kind of a form of self-help. She released this album, The Hour of the Witch, back in 1971, and it's a pretty interesting release. The first side of the record is basically just her kind of educating you about witchcraft. It's not exactly what you think in terms of spooky stuff, although it does have background music that could be pulled from one of those spooky sound effects CDs. But like I said, it's educational. It's about her belief system, and she takes it very seriously. It's definitely not a joke. And then the B-side actually has some spells that you can cast yourself. The first is about granting wishes, then there's one to make a man love you, one to make a woman love you, a love potion, and a spell to discourage unwanted suitors. So basically you have your whole love life covered no matter where you fall on the spectrum. The record comes housed in a gatefold jacket, which inside features liner notes from Gundella's daughter, which provides some insight about her mother. It's a pretty interesting release put out by Modern Harmonic. It's pressed on green vinyl. You can also pick it up on CD. If you listen real closely, you might pick up an interesting thing or two, or even if you think it's kind of silly, it still makes good background music for like a Halloween gathering. Before the internet, most horror fans got their news from Fangoria. Now, unfortunately, the magazine's had a pretty well-documented fall from grace, and it looks like it's never going to be printed again. It's a sad day, but that's not to say that print is dead itself. As a matter of fact, former Fangoria editor Chris Alexander recently launched a new publication venture called Phantasm Media. That's Phantasm with an F, not to be confused with the classic horror film Phantasm with a PH. Now, they recently released their first issue of their Phantasm magazine. It's a really impressive one. It is George A. Romero, the official magazine. The cover art is sure to strike a chord with any horror fan who's still reeling over the death of George A. Romero, as it depicts the godfather of the zombies looming over as four of his most memorable creations. It's illustrated by Brian Stewart, another Fangoria alumnus, who's also an editor and publisher of the magazine. And if that weren't enough, the back has a cutout George A. Romero mask. The magazine features exclusive interviews with some of Romero's frequent collaborators, like John Russo, Greg Nicotero, John Harrison, Joe Pilato, just to name a few. And it's great because the interviewers ask different questions, not the same things we've heard them answer 1,000 times. So that's refreshing. But even more interesting than the interviews, at least I found, were the essays. There's a little article about each of the Living Dead films. Now, of course, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, to me, these are three of the greatest horror films ever made, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. Now, Land of the Dead's pretty decent as well, but Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead, I mean, it's a noticeable downhill trend towards the end there. But there's essays in here that will have you rethink those films. They'll make you want to revisit them at the very least, which I enjoyed. As you may have guessed, this first issue focuses almost exclusively on the Dead films, which makes sense because they're Romero's most influential and most well-known works, but he still has a lot of great movies outside of that franchise. So what if, from what I understand, Phantasm is working on a second issue that's going to focus on those other Romero movies? I'm really excited to see that one because this is a great introduction. Shows a lot of strong promise. It's great to have another print issue of a magazine that you can actually hold in your hands. As much as I love the internet, I mean, that's kind of my bag, but something different about actually sitting down to read a magazine. It's more of a commitment, something exciting about it. The cover price is $20, which is a little high, but you gotta recognize that, A, this is the first issue, commemorative, could be a collector's item down the line, who knows. But it's also an independent publisher just starting up, and you want to support them if you want to keep seeing print horror media out there. This is probably going to be my last What's in the Box video before Halloween because I've got a lot to do before the big day, but I hope everyone has a happy one. Now, of course, we love watching horror movies all year long, but Halloween only comes once a year, so make it big, celebrate it, enjoy it. Now, the passing of Halloween is always sad, but we got the holidays right around the corner, plus there's sweet post-Halloween sales. I'm probably going to buy a bunch of random cheap junk and show it off to you guys in the next video. So if you want to be among the first to see that, make sure you subscribe to this channel. You can also like, share, comment to show your support. And I'll talk to you guys next time on the next What's in the Box. Happy Halloween!